Today, we're diving deep into something we all encounter every single day, but rarely stop to think about. We're talking about the dark psychology of deception. It's this unsettling, fundamental part of being human that shapes, well, pretty much everything.
And I mean, it's everywhere. Get this. Some studies suggest the average person tells about 2 to 3 lies in a normal 10-minute conversation. Yeah, just let that sink in. It's almost like dishonesty is woven right into the fabric of how we talk to each other.
So, to really wrap our heads around this, we first have to figure out what deception is. And maybe more importantly, why on earth we all do it so often. Okay, so in the world of psychology, deception is pretty clear-cut. It's the intentional act of making someone believe something that you know isn't true. And that word intentional is the absolute key here. This isn't about being wrong by accident. It's about making a deliberate choice to mislead.
And it turns out there are 2 main flavors of deception. You've got your sins of commission. That's the classic outright lie. But then you have the sneakier ones, the sins of omission. This is where you're not technically saying something false. You're just conveniently leaving out a really important piece of the truth. And you see this play out all the time, right? From a little kid saying, "I didn't eat the last cookie," to way more serious stuff online, like catfishing, or even just using a photo on a dating app that's 5 years and 20 pounds out of date. The digital world has become this perfect breeding ground for deception because you just lose all those face-to-face cues.
So why do we do it? What's the point? Well, according to what's called interpersonal deception theory, our reasons usually fall into one of 3 buckets. First, there are instrumental lies. You lie to get something you want. Then relational lies. The little white lies we tell to keep things from getting awkward. And finally, identity lies, which are all about protecting our ego and how people see us.
But here's the thing. Telling a lie isn't some free pass. It comes with a real cost, both in your mind and in your body. So what's actually happening inside the liar's anxious brain?
So what is that cost, really? What's going on under the surface when someone is being dishonest?
Well, it turns out lying is incredibly hard work for your brain. It jacks up something called your cognitive load. Just think about it for a second. Your brain has to actively push down the truth, invent a believable story out of thin air, and watch the other person's reaction like a hawk to see if they're buying it, all at the same time. It is mentally exhausting.
And that intense mental workout, it often leaks out physically. That stress can trigger real, measurable responses. Blinking faster, pupils getting bigger, maybe the voice gets a little higher pitched. Now, none of these are a magic tell, but they are little clues that point to the anxiety that's bubbling under the surface.
So, with all those potential clues, you'd think we'd be pretty decent lie detectors, right? Nope. Not even close. When you actually test people, the average person can spot a lie with about 50% accuracy. That's literally no better than just flipping a coin. So why are we so bad at this? It's because of something called the truth default state. Basically, for society to even work, for us to buy things, have conversations, build relationships, we have to start with a basic assumption of trust. We're wired to believe people because the only alternative is a world where you're constantly suspicious of everyone and nothing would ever get done.
Okay, this is where our whole story takes a really fascinating, kind of mind-bending turn. We've been talking about lying to other people, but what happens when the person you're trying to deceive is yourself?
And this brings up a huge question. If we're so naturally inclined to believe other people, doesn't it stand to reason that the easiest person in the world to fool is the one looking back at us in the mirror?
And that is the absolute core of self-deception. It's the process of actually convincing ourselves that our own lie is the truth. And evolutionarily speaking, this is a kind of a dark but brilliant strategy. Why? Because if you truly believe your own lie, you don't give off any of those nervous tics or signs of guilt. You become a much, much more convincing liar to other people. I mean, think about this really common, really painful example. Sometimes we might subconsciously choose to ignore blinking red flags that a partner is cheating. Admitting that truth would be so devastating, it could shatter our entire world. So our brain kind of protects us by helping us lie to ourselves. This actually has a name. It's called betrayal blindness.
It's this wild survival mechanism where our brain just denies a reality that threatens a super important emotional bond, whether it's with a partner, a parent, or even an institution we rely on. We literally choose to be blind just to keep that connection safe.
And this all leads us to the real-world fallout. Let's take a look at the incredible damage this can do and just how fragile the nature of truth really is.
Just look at this data on betrayal blindness in action. In a study of people who'd been scammed, a jaw-dropping 71% said they actually had suspicions early on. And even crazier, 90% had been warned by friends or family. They got scammed anyway because that need to trust, that need for connection, just overrode all the obvious red flags.
So, is there anything we can actually do? Well, there's no silver bullet here. The best advice is to stop looking for one single tell, like Pinocchio's nose. Instead, you want to look for inconsistencies in someone's story over time and focus on clusters of weird behaviors, not just one shifty glance. But you always got to remember, even the pros are wrong a lot of the time.
And this challenge just gets magnified 1,000 times over in our digital lives. When you take away body language, tone of voice, eye contact, you lose almost all the data your brain uses to figure out if someone's being straight with you. And that ambiguity is exactly why online scams, fake news, and catfishing are so incredibly effective. When you boil it all down, the real cost of deception isn't just one lie. It's the slow erosion of trust, that invisible glue that holds everything together, from our marriages to our entire societies. And when that glue dissolves, things start to fall apart.
So deception is this fundamental, double-edged human tool. It helps us navigate a complicated social world, but it also causes unbelievable damage. And if it all starts with the lies we tell ourselves, well, that leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question to think about.